Have you ever wondered how a single geopolitical event can reshape the world's perceptions of security? Today, we delve into the 2014 annexation of Crimea by Russia. This event, seemingly distant and perhaps even irrelevant to some, sparked a global outcry, leading to a cascade of international sanctions against Russia. It was a brazen violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, escalating tensions in the region and reshaping how we understand security in Europe. The importance of comprehending such historical events and their far-reaching consequences cannot be overstated. Join me as we unravel the events leading up to and following the annexation of Crimea. The story begins in late 2013 with Ukraine's political landscape in tumult. This was a time when the nation was balanced precariously on the edge of a cliff, the winds of political unrest blowing fiercely. The capital city, Kiev, was the epicenter of a social movement that would go down in history as the Euromaidan protests. These were no ordinary demonstrations. The Euromaidan protests were a thunderous cry for change, a groundswell of public sentiment against corruption and for closer integration with the European Union. The Ukrainian people, weary of the status quo, were rallying for a future they believed was within their grasp. At the heart of this political maelstrom was Viktor Yanukovych, then president of Ukraine. Yanukovych, who had been courting the EU, abruptly pivoted towards Russia, rejecting a critical association agreement with the EU. This was seen as a betrayal by many Ukrainians, a rejection of their European aspirations. The ensuing backlash was swift and fierce. Yanukovych's decision ignited the Euromaidan protests, transforming peaceful demonstrations into full-scale civil unrest. For months, the streets of Kiev were awash with the colors of the Ukrainian flag, the air filled with the chants of protesters demanding change. The tension escalated, culminating in deadly clashes between protesters and police in February 2014. Yanukovych's regime crumbled under the weight of the protests. Accused of corruption and human rights abuses, he was ousted in February 2014, fleeing to Russia amidst the chaos. His departure left a power vacuum in Ukraine, creating a state of instability that rippled across the nation. With Ukraine in political turmoil, an opportunity presented itself to Russia. In March 2014, the world watched as Russian forces moved into Crimea. The peninsula, recognized as part of Ukraine since the country's independence in 1991, suddenly found itself in the grip of a foreign power. But what led to this audacious move? The trigger was a political crisis in Ukraine. The Ukrainian president Viktor Yanukovych had been ousted in February, following widespread protests against his pro-Russian stance. This political turmoil created a window of opportunity for Russia to assert its influence. Russian troops, without insignia, began to occupy key sites in Crimea. The presence of these little green men, as they were colloquially called, was a clear sign of Russia's intent. Yet, Moscow continued to deny any involvement, an assertion that remained in place until much later. Meanwhile, a controversial referendum was held in Crimea on March 16, 2014. The questions on the ballot were stark: join Russia or restore the 1992 constitution, which would effectively mean independence from Ukraine. The official results showed an astonishing 97% in favor of joining Russia, but these figures were widely disputed. Many international observers labeled the referendum as illegitimate and rigged. The response of the Crimean people was mixed. Some, especially those of Russian descent, welcomed the annexation, seeing it as a return to their motherland. Yet others, including the indigenous Crimean Tatars and those loyal to Ukraine, were deeply opposed. They feared the loss of their cultural identity and the erosion of their rights. The Ukrainian government, still reeling from the political crisis, was unable to mount an effective response. It decried the annexation as illegal and called for international support. Yet the wheels of geopolitics were already in motion. Despite international outcry, by the end of March, Russia had officially annexed Crimea. With Crimea now under Russian control, the international community had to respond, and respond they did. The annexation of Crimea sparked a wave of international condemnation, leading to a series of punitive measures against Russia. The European Union, United States, and a host of other countries quickly moved to impose sanctions. These sanctions were not light slaps on the wrist. They targeted key sectors of Russia's economy, including finance, energy, and defense, aiming to cripple the nation's economic growth. Overnight, Russia found itself isolated from significant parts of the global economic system. The impact was swift and severe. The Russian economy, already teetering on the edge of recession, began to shrink. The value of the ruble plummeted, inflation soared, and foreign investment dwindled. The ordinary Russian citizens felt the pinch as the cost of living increased, while wages stagnated. But the repercussions extended beyond the economic sphere. The annexation had a profound effect on Russia's international relations. It strained Russia's ties with the West to breaking point, pushing the nation into a geopolitical corner. The relationship between Russia and the West, which was already fraught with tension, plunged into a deep freeze, reminiscent of the Cold War era. Yet the annexation of Crimea was not just about the seizure of territory, it was also about the assertion of power and influence. It was a clear message from Russia to the West, stating that it would not be pushed around. In the wake of the annexation, another significant development unfolded. The move sparked a surge in separatist movements in eastern Ukraine. Emboldened by Russia's actions, these groups saw an opportunity to push for their own political goals. This led to a new wave of conflict and instability in the region, adding another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. The annexation not only strained Russia's relations with the West, but it also led to a surge in separatist movements in eastern Ukraine. The annexation of Crimea had far-reaching consequences beyond just Ukraine and Russia. It sent ripples across the globe, transforming the way we perceive security, particularly in Europe. A sense of unease and uncertainty began to permeate the region, as nations grappled with the reality of a new geopolitical landscape. The audacious move by Russia not only violated Ukraine's sovereignty, but also shattered the illusion of inviolable borders, a cornerstone of international law. This brazen act of aggression brought to the forefront the potential for major power conflicts in the 21st century, and the fragility of peace in our interconnected world. In the immediate vicinity, the annexation heightened tensions, particularly in eastern Ukraine. The Donbass region became a flashpoint of conflict, with Kremlin-backed separatists engaged in an ongoing battle for control. This strife has resulted in a devastating humanitarian crisis, with thousands of lives lost and millions displaced, a stark reminder of the human cost of such geopolitical power plays. Beyond Ukraine, the annexation sparked concerns among other nations in Russia's periphery. Countries like Georgia, which had experienced a similar invasion by Russia in 2008, felt a renewed sense of vulnerability. The fear of encroachment by a larger, more powerful neighbor touched off a series of defensive responses, leading to an escalation in military buildups and a shift in alliances. But the ripple effect wasn't confined to the immediate region. It reverberated across the world, leading to a reassessment of international security. Nations, both big and small, were compelled to reevaluate their positions and strategies in this new, unpredictable world order. The 2014 annexation of Crimea, a defining moment in our recent history, continues to shape our world today. It serves as a stark reminder of the volatility of international relations, the importance of upholding international law, and the need for a collective commitment to peace and security. From the streets of Kiev to the halls of the Kremlin, the story of Crimea's annexation is a tale of power, politics, and international relations. We've journeyed through the intricate details of this controversial chapter, from its prelude to its aftermath, and examined the ripple effect on the global stage. We've revisited the year 2014, when Russia, in a move that sent shockwaves across the world, annexed Crimea from Ukraine. This audacious act was not just a violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, but a brazen challenge to the global order, fundamentally reshaping our perceptions of security in Europe. We've explored the aftermath of this annexation, the international condemnation, and the sanctions that followed. The world responded, but the deed had been done, and the map was irrevocably changed. Crimea, once part of Ukraine, was now under Russian control. We've also delved into the ripple effects of this event, the tensions it escalated, and the new conflicts it sparked. This one act has had far-reaching implications, affecting not just Ukraine and Russia, but also other nations, their alliances, and the very fabric of international relations. As we wrap up, let's not forget that this story is still unfolding. The consequences of this annexation continue to reverberate, shaping the geopolitics of the region and beyond. The annexation of Crimea is a stark reminder of how the echoes of history can still be heard, shaping our present and potentially our future. As we continue to grapple with its consequences, the annexation of Crimea serves as a stark reminder of the profound ways in which history can shape our present and future. And,